And you're not hearing an echo. I hope you're not hearing an echo. Oh,
No echoes, no echoes. We're the sound is good. I have to constantly adjust sound. Hey, welcome everybody. We're not going to start until 12. We'll give people a chance. Well, 12 my time, 2 Eastern, 1 Central, 11 West Coast time. So give me the obligatory one if you guys can hear us, just to make sure everything is good. I'm pretty sure it is, but you never know. I saw Anna in there earlier. Brooke Elliott just joined. Jules, and of course Ellie is in there. Sandra D is in the house. What's up, Sandra? Nice to have you here. And Jen, wow, no one declared Dave. They're all coming in. Wow. Susan P is in the house. What's up, Susan? McDonald's in the house. What's up? Nita's Nook. Wow, a lot of couple of new people coming on in. It's going to be an awesome interview, declared Dave. It is going to be an awesome interview. I haven't started yet. We're not going to start till the top of the hour. I'm with Windy City, aka Paul here. We were just shooting the shit backstage and thought we'd shoot the shit with you all and chat for a little bit before we get started. Kathy Scoggins, welcome. Jal Storm, welcome. Chris, welcome. Wow, just a lot of people already.
I love all these familiar names.
Yes,
I've
yes,
seen,
yes.
I see these names so often, and that's one of the things that I love is that if you want to, you can curate an incredibly loyal following or audience.
Yeah, yeah, and especially if you're doing righteous work, tends to work best. This community is the best, Brooke says. You're the first one to say my name correctly. Oh, okay. Well, that deserves, if you're not already subscribed, that deserves a subscription, right, Nita? I'm pretty sure you're subscribed. That's why you're here. Let's see. I think we're good. We're just gonna wait a couple minutes and then we'll get started. I said noon my time or 2 Eastern, so I'll give that much leeway. Make sure you are hitting that like button. That's how more people get into these chats. I'm hoping to get a few more. Anna says MLH does great interviews. Thank you. Yes,
I'll
thank
agree
you.
with that.
That's awesome. I figured as much because you're here.
Yes.
If you're here, pretty much you get the notification. So McDonald says Windy City has the voice that can be on the radio. So
I hate hearing my voice.
it's the same thing. Wendy, I I have a hard time looking back at my videos and watching and listening and all that. Although I will go back on interviews because I think I do a fairly decent job at that. So appreciate that, Anna, and I'm sure Wendy appreciates that comment, McDonald.
Absolutely. 100%.
We're going to have a great conversation today, the intersection of basically cop watching and civil rights and 1A stuff with protesting and Scientology. We're going to get all into it. Wendy needs to say sweaty balls. I don't know if you could get him to say that.
I will not say sweaty balls.
Yeah, he will never say sweaty balls, declared Dave. Gregory, welcome. Nice to have you in chat as well. Kathy says we both have great voices. Thank you very much, Kathy. I appreciate that. We're going to have fun. Let me get situated here. Take a quick drink.
Do I have to turn around so they can see the back of my head as well?
I won't make you do that, Wendy, but you're more than welcome to do pirouettes or any type of dancing on stream is always good. Speaking of dance, well, I'll do my plugs after. All right, we're about a minute away from show time. And then I'll start the intro music, and we'll just go. we didn't plan anything. I never do that because I don't. I like to be more genuine than prepared and planned. So this should be a great chat, and hope you all in chat enjoy. Nanya's in the house. What's up, Nanya? I see you there. I hope you're having a good day.
I like the idea of we should just being present is more important than anything else. when
Yes.
and it's been my commentary on it's been my commentary on the stream all the time as well, that I apologize sometimes I'm not paying attention to the chat. I want to be present with whom I'm talking with.
You know what? Let me change before we get started. Hope you guys will give me just a minute here.
So where's everybody watching from?
Yeah, where is everybody watching from? I'm making a banner for you, Wendy. All right. I got a banner for you. Let's save
Very nice.
and let's show that. There we go. Let's see, what comments do we got? Sandra D says East Coast. Evil Blue Eyes in the house. What's up, Evil Blue Eye? California, Gimmickless. Yes, I know. Northern, right? I think you're a little more northern, Gimmickless. Patrick Skinner's from San Diego. West Coasty, no one says. Zhao Storm says Utah, Indiana, New York, Long Island. Chris is hailing from. Where else? Okay, we're
Got some
good.
internationals in there.
Yep. Moses, I saw your comment about a new emoji, and there might be a new emoji after I get done with this interview, just to let you know. Ellie says, my house. Yes, of course, your house. Gregory from Mars. Yes, that makes sense, Gregory. Yes, for sure. Okay, let's get started here. All right, here we go. This might blow your ears out a little bit, Wendy.
No problem.
And welcome everybody to the MLH show. This is a planned interview that I have with a special guest today. My guest today is Windy City Thetan Watch, aka Paul. Windy, aka Paul. How are you today, man? Thank you for joining the show.
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here in Chicago. I've had my morning of watching SPTV,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
ready to
Very
see how you're
eventful.
doing.
Very
Yeah.
eventful this morning on SPTV. Last night we had tennis size hail, which really took a toll on the Shark, my car. So I have to deal with that after this, but I already put in the claim and all that. But yeah, and I got a nasty. I was covering up my plants, and I got a nasty wound on my knee for my efforts. So it was crazy. Already a question: does anyone know if anyone protests the Bethpage Scientology facility in Long Island? I don't, Chris. I could not tell you. I don't. I'm not out there. Ellie says Liberty does. Okay, so there's your answer. All right, we're gonna get right into the interview here. Now, we kind of wanted to talk, even though nothing was planned. We wanted to talk about the intersection between kind of First Amendment audits, the First Amendment itself, Scientology, protesting, civil liberties, all kinds of stuff. So. But I'm going to start out a little bit before that. I want to talk to you, Wendy, about how do you want me to address you, Windy City or Paul?
I think that more people are used to Windy City. I put Paul up there so people don't think I'm hiding, and I never was hiding. I just wanted to wait until
Yeah,
they unveiled my name, and they
right.
finally did unveil my name.
Yeah. So, just for our purposes here, I'll just call you Windy City because that's I think it's more appropriate. That's channel appropriate. So, uh, I want to ask you, like, how did you get involved with protesting Scientology specifically?
Yeah. So I'm going to say I don't have a long history of protesting in really any spaces. Now I'm going to say that I'll do the right thing, and I'm going to stick up for a person that if I can see somebody's being shamed or harmed, I'm going to do what I can to stick up for that person. I think doing the right thing is never the wrong thing to do. But in regards to Scientology, historically, I just thought it was a fanciful, kind of humorous ideology to live or to live by.
Mm,
And I didn't know of what I still call the crimes of Scientology. So when I started maybe two years ago, 18 months ago, Aaron comes into my feed and I start seeing these second generations stories of abuses and criminal activity. And I never knew about that at any point in time. And at that point, I said, you know what? I don't really. I think I can stand up against that. I don't like that idea, but it was still mostly a panel scenario. And then
mm,
over Christmas, right, we had the LA, William Good and the LA team started doing live broadcasts on protesting,
mhm.
and that just felt something more comfortable that I could do in
Yeah,
that space.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. William Good is a good example of the I want to say like intersection, right, between cop watching and protesting Scientology. He had another before he had the Scientology channel, the Streets LA moniker. I think his other channel is We Film LA, or it was a
film the
cop
police. I think it's film the
film the
police LA.
yeah, Film the Police LA. There you go. I misspoke, but and that I followed that for a while, until I started doing my own thing, and then I just lost track of a lot of that because, I was so busy with my own, so to keep up with everybody is next near to impossible. But it's funny that you mentioned Streets, because Streets is, in my opinion, doing things the right way. He I know his history and what he went through, and it's all BS, and he definitely has a purpose, and he deserves all the accolades he gets, because he really digs in and he does the work. And that's kind of the difference between as I see it, the pretenders in the 1A community and the pretenders in the protesting Scientology community. Is the people that want to do the hard work usually rise. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I agree with that. Now I'm going to say that he's louder than I am, but he's authoritative in his voice.
Yeah.
So his presence on the street is, and you can tell the police are on their heels when he shows up on scene.
Hmm.
But to that point of doing the hard work, I don't think that I've seen a city council meeting where he's not present.
Yeah.
So he's attending those. He understands the law. He understands. He can do the research. He Pressure is the best way I'll say it. He really puts pressure on the police to be on their best behavior.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say they respond well, but he does know how to put pressure on the police.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like it's one thing, like a lot of the 1A community, I hate to say it, but a lot of people, we're all in this for clicks and views, right? I'm not going to completely say that my channel is not in it for clicks and views, because I would be hypocritical in saying so. That's, I mean, the only way that these channels survive is with clicks and views, so in that sense, it would be, but it's not like the nefarious way that I'm talking about. There are clout chasers and people that, like I said, don't do the hard work, don't put in the time, like you said, at city council meetings. A lot of times I am at the city council meetings in Aurora, because that a lot of, I mean, you can point out hypocrisies and kind of speak your mind and all that, even though I tend to not. I usually let KDOT do the talking at those things, but I observe, and I observe the people that are there, and the stuff that they try to get away with, and stuff like that. So yeah, that is an interesting thing. Streets will go to those meetings. I just saw a I think it was a city council meeting, but it was kind of tiny, so I don't know if it was, if LA, they have different city council meetings for different parts of the city. But yes, you will see him there and doing a lot of work. But I want to talk about your work in Chicago, hence Windy City.
Yes.
Um, so was it a conscious decision of yours to kind of handle things the way that you do? I've noticed your streams. I think they're extraordinary, if not noticed as much, Wendy. But you point out a lot of nuanced details when you're out there and you're observing. You kind of, in a way, you kind of remind me of me when it comes to like observance, and I'm wondering, is that more your stick when you get out there, is just being, fully aware of what's going on while you're there?
It is, but I'm going to say that I fell into it. When I went out the first day, I had no idea what I was going to do. I just wanted to show up, right, at the end of the
Mhm,
day.
mhm,
Um, but one of the things that I find most important is if somebody is describing the entire setting for me, I get a better understanding. If it's a broadcaster, I get a better understanding of what the story is in these situations. So it's the idea that I feel like I'm trying to bring the A roll and the B roll and the C roll at the same time,
mm,
and keep people informed and engaged in that way. When
yeah.
I first went out there, the first person in Chicago that did auditing was Trashy V12 BMW, and that was at the Legacy organization up in Lakeview.
Mhm,
And then maybe a few weeks later, we saw Shannon show up, and then I'm a couple of weeks behind that. And my first day, Shannon was there, and Korn was there, and Trashy showed up as well. But the only thing I knew to say was it's a cult, and um, I didn't feel comfortable yelling it. I never feel like people are going to respond to you when you yell. I've said this before. I'm not saying don't yell at people. I'm saying it doesn't fit my style. I don't feel comfortable that I'll be able to engage with people in that
mhm,
space.
mm. That's interesting because I have both styles, right? Like when the cops show up, um, I always say this. I'm more of a mirror. If you, and I've learned a lot since I started. I was, when I first started, I was a little more big mouth, I would say, a little more but that comes from years of seeing the abuse that police do, either firsthand or it throughout the communities that I serve. So it was more frustration. It's a frustrating thing to see these abuses by people in power, and it just it I don't know. I just kind of evolved a little bit. I've had a great team of people that kind of advise on certain things that maybe I should or shouldn't have done, or maybe that I could have done better. So I guess that's the next question I have for you. How open are you to like constructive criticism and things of that nature?
100%. And I've kind of always engaged my audience the same way, saying if there's something you feel like it could be better, great. But also, I'm going to say that we have some mods out here, and we have some mods in common. I get a lot of advice there, and we both know that we have somebody who works very well in this space. And my hope is I'm a sponge in regards to what they were going to offer me in that space, but also other protesters. Um, Natalie has given me some good advice in
Mm,
this space, but I want to keep getting better. Right? That there's no I. This is not where I want to end up. I want to end up in a far better space where I'm better equipped to handle both the police. I feel much better equipped to handle the Scientologist now, but I'm I get a little bit unconfident, or I lose my confidence with the police
mm,
sometimes,
mm.
because again, that becomes a much more serious. If you make the mistake with the police, it's a much more serious penalty that
Yeah,
can that can.
let's talk about that because this is actually really a conversation between two people that I think are very thoughtful in their content and what they do and how they go about doing it. And like I said, I started out doing cop watching with KDOT, and a lot of it was very contentious, and it's still contentious to this day. But I've learned that I always want to let them make the mistakes first. Let me get to a comment that kind of ties in, and I forgot to get to this earlier, Anna, but it does tie in. She says streets inspired a worldwide movement, which was needed. It inspired many protesters and brought in new viewers. I followed Aaron's channel for many years. This was a needed push. I agree with that. But a lot of it, people have called me the streets of Denver and other names, and I think it's an apt kind of descriptor because even though I didn't know about Streets Channel until after I started doing Scientology protest and stuff like that. And then I found out that he started out as a cop watcher, which was super interesting to have that intersection of communities within one person. And you mentioned something about the police. There uh, when Jay was protesting here in Denver, I had never even heard of Jay, right? Denver Jay, Denver Scientology audits, and I'm gonna go ahead and give her a shout out because she deserves it. Ellie called me one day saying that Jay was getting arrested, and you got to get over there. And of course, I live in the Denver area, and if there's something that I can do to help anybody in the city, the Denver metro area, I get in my car and I do it. If it's possible. So that's how I kind of started to recognize, and I knew about Scientology for years, but my expertise really lied in with dealing with the police. And so I always ever since that day, ever since that fateful day that I went to help Jay, it just it was a natural thing to, and I recommend it anywhere anybody is, to hook up with a knowledgeable person. Make sure you do your due diligence. Don't just hook up with anybody, because there's a lot of what I consider bad actors out there, and they could get you in a lot of trouble, and there is peril, Wendy, and I wanted to talk to you about that because I heard you. I believe it was a clip on Natalie's that you did, or maybe a different interview that you did, talking about personal safety, and can you talk a little bit about that? And then I want to talk about what I had the exception to, but not in a contentious way, just an understanding. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Now, I will say that the first time I became aware of you was when you came to Jay. I was watching the day that you came to kind of help Jay out,
Yeah,
and I thought, wow, what a, again, that idea that it's never the wrong thing to do the right thing,
right,
right?
right.
Um, I do. I'm going to say that I always make sure that there is space. I think personal safety is rather important.
Yeah.
I don't do something that a lot of people, I'm going to say that I feel comfortable and confident in my city to be alone. I don't encourage other people to do that. I haven't, early on, I didn't have a body camera. I now have a body camera and it's with me all the time.
Mm,
So that I've got that other perspective. But if you can, come with somebody else. Great. Now, if you can't, then make sure that you've got a camera going all the time, whether you're streaming or not.
mm, mm,
The after the fact evidence is rather important. On in regards to the um, I tend to back away from people, and what I mean by that is I give people enough space so I'm not blocking a sidewalk or being
mm, mm.
in a threatening manner
Sure.
in that way. Um, I do feel fleet of foot.
Mm,
I will say that I've engaged people in conversations, and I know that my heart has started to race, and I don't like when I do that
mm,
part, because then there's that possibility you get out of control or emotional about what that situation is. But for the most part, I do think that you should take care of yourself first and that personal safety in that regard. And the idea that if there are people, if there are more than one person, if you ever see somebody engage with the police or a Scientologist, please sacrifice your stream and put that person in full view, because their camera won't be able to catch everything that's happening up close. in that space.
This is a
Now,
great point, Wendy, and I'll get to that after you finish your comment. Sorry to interrupt.
no, oh, no problem. I was wondering if that was one of the items that that I could use some coaching on in this space. I when you notice when follow flyers, and I want people to realize I'm following the flyers. I don't care if a Scientologist walks away from the building. I have no desire to be engaged with them at all.
Mhm.
It's when they have flyers and they're going to disrupt my community that I do follow them, and I try to make sure that I'm keeping a respectful space there. I don't close space on them. I do close space on the people who they hand the flyers out to. Something that I've kind of reminded people about is that that person is also a stranger to you. So you can't really go rushing up to them, arms waving and all frantic,
Mm.
because you're going to freak them out
Sure.
just the same in that space. So those are mostly what I would say are the things that are important about that idea of personal safety.
Mm.
I'll also say that it's not as much safety as I am always aware when I am leaving the organization that I change routes, and this is more of their PI type work where they want to try and spy on you in these spaces. So know your area, know how to get around in your area. What buildings can you walk out into and then walk out of in 3 different directions, so that you could really confound anybody that's trying to follow you.
Yeah, that's sound advice for sure. Anna, another comment that she made was specifically about, if I could speak today, about the flyers. She loves how you take the flyers that they give out from people walking by. It's awesome, and that is really cool. I just have a slight. I guess it's a slight philosophical difference. I'm okay with personal safety. Obviously, you don't want to end up on the wrong side of a bullet, or a fist, or anything of that nature. But I think it takes a special mentality to, first of all, get out there at all, whether you're doing cop watching or you're doing protesting, and both have their perils. Make no mistake. I've learned through a lot of Scientology videos that even the Scientologists can be dangerous at times. We saw Jay get in a tussle with Curtis. We've seen other nefarious things that church, that quote unquote church, I call it a cult too, that cult does. But I guess my thing is, like, if how, like, the cops see something, say something. I'm that way, but with the camera. And I think you made a really good point of sometimes you have to sacrifice your stream for a bigger story. You know what I mean? And I'll give you an example. I was watching somebody one time, and they were protesting, but there was something going on with the cops a block away that was, to me, a much bigger story at the time, and that person refused to go over there. They were just too scared. And it's not a matter of ego or anything of that nature. It's just the journalistic instinct in me would have been like, I need to go over there and see what's going on there to make sure nobody gets hurt over there. That's kind of my view of things. And when I heard you say that, I knew what you were talking about, but I think you've clarified things a little differently. You probably would take your camera and go and see what's going on as well.
Correct. And there have been times where I've walked off stream on Scientology because something else was occurring. I think there was. I've never seen the actual fire, but I've seen the fire trucks arrive on some of the buildings, and it's like, okay, well, let's see what's going on here. And I know that we don't really have fire watchers or anything of that nature, but it would be the same if it was a police stop that was happening. Now, that's not a violent crime location where I'm at very often, so the likelihood of there being an awful lot of side events that would involve the police is fairly rare where that Chicago org is at.
Yeah, Ellie says something here that I've been preaching for a very long time. The goal is never to get arrested, but know your local laws. And knowing your local laws is key. I see, like, Jay has been going from place to place, and he does a pretty good job of brushing up those laws. But I see a lot of people that want to travel, or they don't even know their own local laws, and they get in a lot of trouble, and it's because they watch people like myself, or you, or any of the other protesters, and they want to mimic what those people do, which is very flattering. But in different places, you could get in trouble for different things. It's like what there was a comment here. I think it was Patrick Skinner. Yes, he says also. Chicago law labels rushing up to someone as a type of assault, contact not required. See, I didn't even know that.
Correct.
So a cop could just say, "Oh, you were rushing up to me, and even though you didn't touch me, that's assault, and yeah, I could get in a lot of trouble." So it's important to know your local laws. Spend an hour, just looking at if you're going to do this. Make sure your bases are covered because, like Ellie said, the goal is never to get arrested. I mean, I'll never understand that sentiment, where people try to antagonize and now I'm a loudmouth. I've already said it. I will say stuff, and it's warranted every time I say it. But you know, I've never been arrested for a reason. I know my boundaries. I know what I can and can't say, and there are consequences to the First Amendment too. So maybe we can talk about that too, Wendy. From your perspective, how do you feel as it relates to Scientology with the First Amendment?
Can we come back to First Amendment for just one second? Because I want to
Absolutely.
hit on what Patrick had just talked about,
Yes.
and the idea that not only are law does exist. If I do rush up to somebody and I, you know, make a furtive move, it's really that they can defend themselves. Or in the stalking law, it says if they feel like they might be threatened or assault, battery or assault, then that's enough to charge. We recently, maybe 3 weeks ago, we had an incident where the police came because of chalk and then gave me a lecture on I can't put my camera in people's faces. And I will say that I have probably 1,000 hours of video at this point in time. Zero times have I ever put my camera in somebody's face. So he was lecturing me on something that I hadn't done, and I did adopt DOA's stance of don't eat yellow snow and what other things should you not do in this situation.
Don't
Well,
run with scissors.
right, right. Later that day, there was a woman from Scientology, and she did come out and she came into my space, and I retreated 3 times and she moved forward 3 times.
Mhm.
And the police said, that's not assault. And I said,
It's funny because cops have egos the size of Texas, and they will tend to, and especially if they know that you're a protester or a cop watcher or anything of that nature, you don't get the same treatment as a normal person would in many different ways, and it could go both ways too, right? Like like that law. I never heard of that law where somebody rushing up to you could be considered assault, and you just said 3 times you retreated, and I mean, that alone should tell you everything you need to know about policing as it stands now. It's just what's good for me is not good for thee, or good, the old saying goes. So this
right,
is, yeah, let me cop explain this to you, gimmickless says that. I mean, it's always, they have to give you a directives, which is why a lot of the 1A auditors will push back on that, and say, like you said, don't eat yellow snow. It's like mundane stupidity to hear this stuff from police. Like, okay, I know it's illegal to kill someone. I'm not going to go do that. So why do you have to tell me to do that? Don't block the roadway. Don't do this. Don't do that. It's like they just can't help themselves to do that. And I think you experienced that a little bit of that too. It's like it's frustrating because it's like, are you guys law enforcement, or what do you guys actually do? I mean, the statistics say that they solve about 2% of all crime nationwide. If you put all crime, and I'm sure different localities are different for different crimes. I'm like, I've had people throw that statistic back in my face. Well, here in Abilene, Texas, we don't have any problems with car theft, because, and the statistics are this, it's like 50%, and they'll come up with their percentage, and I tell them, whatever percentage that spews out of your mouth, is it good enough for you? Is it good enough for you?
Yeah.
You
And
know,
and
so
they are made up facts, right? The idea that they're going to we know this from the opening day. We had trouble with Commander Harris. And by the way, I was not there opening day. The the protesting force had trouble with Commander Harris. In Chicago, the police department's divided up into districts. The first district is who is the district of record for where Printers Row is at. He had he early on in his career, he was um, chastised, or there were reports written up on him. He was, I think, he was kind of taken to school because he faked all of the crime reports. He said he had lowered reports in his district by such an amount,
mm,
and none of them were correct. When they finally went through the records, they realized that almost every stat had actually risen, not lowered. And again, it's the police come to you from an authoritative standpoint and think you'll believe them because they talk with authority and talk with a badge and with that with their uniform to badger you into belief
yeah,
is the best way I'll
yeah.
say it.
That it's interesting because there was a Supreme Court decision, and I can't remember off the top of my head. Gimmickless might be able to help me. He's in chat. But there have been a couple, but there's one in particular where it basically says that the police can lie with no repercussions. And
Correct.
I think that that is probably one of the most problematic Supreme Court decisions with far-reaching um repercussions that I don't even think they could have anticipated. And I think if we're ever to do police reform, I think that that in itself could potentially be a game changer, because I've seen time and time again, like interrogations where the person didn't commit the crime, get a healthy sentence from nothing. They lie when they're out in public to people, and I just simply don't think that they should be allowed to lie. I think it's and I know the reasons why the Supreme Court gave, you have to try to get a crime solved, but how is that solving anything when your premise of what you do or don't have as evidence is based on a lie? You know,
Two
so
two wrongs don't make a right is one of the things that I recall growing up.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, I mean, there's just there's lots of lots of things with policing nowadays that really need to be changed, and that's I think that's the role of the modern cop watchers, to make incremental change that eventually snowballs into something bigger, and that's kind of how I view it. As far as protesting goes, do you think these Scientology protests are actually making a difference? And I do want to talk to you. I'll have a follow up to that after.
No problem. I'm going to say, if you're asking me in general, probably. Me
Yeah,
personally, 100%. There's nobody here that's going to tell me that I haven't affected their ability to recruit. And there's nobody here that's going to tell me that I haven't stopped people from entering that cult.
yeah.
I haven't pulled anybody out of the cult, but I've stopped them from getting new people.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about too, because that was something else interesting that I heard you talk about. Your interest is not in getting somebody out as much as it is in preventing people from getting in. And I kind of have a philosophical difference with that too, because I think the people that are in are every bit of as worthy of getting out as the people that you're trying to prevent from getting in. And I know the pension is to I think it's the easier thing to prevent people from going into that building, and it's the much harder challenge to get somebody out. That's why I have like an open I don't know if you want to call it a challenge per se, but I always say when I'm out there protesting, to anybody that's watching that's in Scientology, I want to take you out to lunch. I'll pay for the lunch, and I'll try to get you out and get you the resources that you need to get out. So I'm wondering what you feel about that.
Yeah, I'll definitely qualify my statement that early on, especially, and I feel much more capable now, but early on, I didn't think that I had the tools to help anybody in that space. Um, One of the things that I have done, and yesterday from your conversation with Phil, I've always asked them, "Do you have anything good to say about the church?"
Hmm.
But Phil said, change that question. Say, "Will the church let you say anything?" And then they'll engage me. More often than not, the reason I'm asking these, people yell at me. I don't say the word cult. Why? Do you have anything good to say about your cult?
Hmm.
And the statement is, nobody's going to engage me in a conversation if I tell them you're in a cult,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that's the reason that I say I have what I feel is a very softball question. Do you have anything positive to say about this organization? Now, I will say that normally, if they don't respond to that, I will go to the "Are you okay with the squirreling? Are you okay that women can't report crimes against them?" To side to hopefully chip away at there's a human inside of there saying, "Okay, wait, maybe what they do here isn't right."
Hmm.
And Trashy has asked me. I love Trashy. Trashy used to ask people come out to lunch, and I do think I want to get to that same point with the last few days. The people have engaged with me. I know the names of some of these people, and they'll wave back to me. I can see them smile. I can see that they realize I'm not the devil when
Hmm.
I'm out there
Yeah.
protesting. And there is that idea that I do think I'm breaking down that barrier that Scientology falsely accuses me of being a criminal on the sidewalk just trying to take down their church.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing too. One day I was contemplating walking into the building, and I know how that would have went. I would have walked in, and within 2 seconds would have been told to leave, even though it says everybody welcome. But I I wish that those people would be a little more open minded on the inside to at least engage in a conversation. And I hate the fact that there's a discipline to engaging with anybody on the outside, an SP, as you, if you will. And it's really hard to break through that barrier. But in my view, I think that's I know, however and I agree, like being out there protesting, I prevented plenty of people from going inside that building and being brainwashed, or at least the beginning of the brainwashing. But to me, I think if we can get more people from the inside out, a la Laura Fam and Serge and Natalie and these type of people to band together and speak about these things, I think we could pick their brains a little bit more. And everybody has a different view, right? So Scientology is constantly changing things from within, right? So the more people we can get out at different intervals, I think that gives us a key to the psyche from within. You know what I mean? And to me, I
Right.
think it's much more. I think for every probably 100 people that we prevent from going in there, which is a great thing. I'm not knocking it in any shape, form, or fashion. But I think that if we can get one person out, I think that bit of knowledge that that person might have would trump, you know, you know, people going into that building. So I just, I think it's, I think it's great both ways. I think, to get people out and to prevent people. I think we should be doing both at the same time all the time, I guess is a long way of getting to that short statement.
And that my expectation is that over time, my knowledge and understanding of how I can engage these staff members is going to improve and increase, right? I already feel much more confident now. Like I can see they'll turn their head every once in a while when I ask a question. Like you can tell that they flinch in regards to
Mhm.
the question. So they're listening to me, even though they're supposed to pretend they're not listening to me. And I become more aware, and it is the people like there are people in this chat right here who I know are under the radar and ex Scientologists who can't come out as such because they still have family in that space. That I they give me the equipment and they to the idea, can I take constructive criticism? 100%, because I keep on learning from them, and I learn from the Noras of the world, and Serge, that what are the things that I can say in that space. But I typically talk three different ways, right? If there's a staff member going in, I usually am trying to be somewhat engaging of them to get them to talk to me. If it's a public walking in who is a public Scientologist, I'm usually challenging them as to how they can support this criminal behavior that's going on in that space. And if it's a public who is interested in going in, then I'm a little bit more vocal in regards to what's going on and forward in it. So I definitely have different styles in the way that I attack. Let's see, attack's the wrong word, but my approach is different based upon my understanding of what category of person I might be talking to in this space. And I do think that over time, I'm going to develop better skills that will help me understand, if I'm at the back door with the people smoking, you know, put the camera down before I come. And, I don't think they know that I've got the body camera as well, just to say, okay, if you're defensive about that, let's just talk, right? I'm more than happy to talk.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I think see. Here's the thing. I don't know how you feel. A couple of things. Like, I don't believe the majority of people within those walls are inherently bad people.
Love yours.
I don't think. I mean, every time I've seen, I kind of cringe sometimes when I see people yelling at just the run of the mill. Even Sea Org members or public members that go inside that building. Sometimes I think a more gentle approach is needed, but other times I think I'm okay with the yelling and the cult speak and stuff, because all they're getting inside is propaganda, right? And all these people can't be that dense that they can't at some point in their journey within Scientology. So, I mean, some people it takes years. Look at Natalie. I mean, how long was she in there? Phil Jones yesterday. I just did that interview with Phil Jones. He was in there for almost 40 years as a public sciento, and it's amazing the journey that some people take. Some people will go in there, just out of, like they say, curiosity, right? That's the whole thing. Curious. I always see those little banners and those posters, curious, tune into this channel on direct TV or come inside the building, all are welcome. Sometimes it takes them every bit of 2 seconds to realize this is BS, and they walk right on out. So it's to me, I like I said, I don't think everybody that goes in there is just an awful evil human being. I think the people at the top are the big time problem, and the only way that I can see, to kind of mitigate that is to take away their tax exempt status. I know in other countries they don't have tax exempt,
Right.
like in Germany and I believe Britain and other places, but here in the U.S., unfortunately, they have that tax exempt status. So I'm wondering, do you think that's the key to taking this whole thing down?
I do. That is the thing that's going to crush their war chest, because their war chest only grows. Now, it doesn't grow as fast as it has in the past, right? They've had better years in the past, but because there is no tax coming out, the little bit that they spend to kind of be a nuisance to most of us protesters, it's not showing up on a radar anywhere. When you 4 billion is a lot of money, and some people say it's 3 billion. Well, 3 billion's just about as
Still
the
a
same
lot of
as four
money.
billion to me, right?
Yeah.
Both of those are as far away from my earnings as possible. Um, so I do think that the tax exempt status is something that we have to do, and that's I've seen several people who have the letter writing campaigns. I do think that it starts locally, because I don't think that you're going to get a senator to change his mind. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying don't write your senator. Write your senator, but temper your expectations. You'll find that the more local you talk, the more reaction you're going to get, right? Because their constituency is much smaller than that of a senator or a president in regards to what's going on.
Mm,
So, um, I've said this before on my channel, that don't think that the other person in the chat is going to call COPA and lodge a complaint. You should lodge one too. don't think the other person in the chat is going to call the alderman. You should call the alderman too, right? That's where you're really going to get this reaction. Now, the alderman is not going to be able to change tax exemption, but if higher up the food chain they start seeing that, wait a second, people care about this topic, then yeah, I do think representatives and senators are going to start becoming a little bit more wary of what this is.
So let me talk to you about the law enforcement angle again, Wendy. What do you think law enforcement's culpability in um, and its role within Scientology? In other words, do you think that law enforcement? I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories going around that they're paid off. They're in the pocket of Scientology. Do you now with every conspiracy theory there are kernels of truth? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say that when I first started showing up in Chicago, I'm one of those that, the vast majority of police are on the up and up and everything of that nature. And similar to what you had said earlier, I'm never the first one that escalates. As soon as a cop disrespects me, I'm going to disrespect them, but I'm going to give them the first chance to do the disrespecting. Um, that as I continued to see the same pattern where the police would come out, they would give us the cop explanation of whatever was going on in the situation, and they really wouldn't listen to the idea that that you're defending somebody who covers up crimes. The only
Right.
reason you're here is to enforce the ability to prosecute crimes. I know you're not the prosecutor, but you're the ones that are on the street doing that process. And these people would not let people come forward. The Danny Masterson case is the one that I do the most often because it's so easy to research,
Hmm.
that those women couldn't report to police. This church stopped them from doing that. And you are coming to their defense,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How does that possibly work?
Yeah, and I, by the way, I disagree with you on the vast majority of cops being good. That's
I'm changing. I'm really changing
right,
again.
right.
It's that I gave them the benefit of the doubt for the long time, but they don't get the benefit of the doubt anymore.
It's funny because and I never understood it because there is that perception that the vast majority are good, right? I hear that a lot, and I'm not trying to chastise you, Wendy, in any shape, form, or fashion, but I'm glad you are kind of coming around a little bit to that because people say that all the time, and the way that I that kind of combat that, and it's kind of anecdotally, it's not there's no real solid way of really knowing that, but how many times have you seen a video where somebody's getting the shit beat out of them and the other cops are just watching?
Correct.
That one, and they say, "Well, see, they were good. They didn't chime in. They didn't beat the guy like the other guy did. Now that guy's bad, but the rest of every no, they're all, in my view, just as culpable because they they just they're just that way. They protect each other. The thin blue line, as they say. I believe, and a lot of us, at least in the 1A and the civil rights movements that are going on, believe that they are literally the biggest gang in the United States. There is some type of validity to that just because of what we've seen. I mean, from the littlest of things. I had a rabbit hole series of videos on my channel about a cop that clearly littered, right? And littering is I mean, if I see somebody throw something on the ground, I mean, especially if it's paper, I mean, it's going to organically go into the ground and be gone, within no time. But just the thought of a policeman doing that, somebody that's supposed to be a shining example of things, and then for me to call him on that and then to go through the process, it actually was a fascinating series of videos because I was pretty dogged about it. You know what I mean? Like, I I felt like that person should have gotten some sort of reprimand or something, and it never happens. Like, I was just in a trial. It's the Kyle Vincent trial. If you guys are keeping score in chat, and by the way, thanks everybody in chat for being there. I'm sorry I'm not naming all you guys. I'm kind of concentrating on Wendy here, but um, I just think that the rules are different for cops than they are for everybody else. And what are your thoughts? Okay, so I I know that's a lot of information, Wendy, but one thing I'm going to ask you is I've always felt like a person in a position of power should have double the penalties for crimes that are committed, right? So
100%.
if
That
if if I steal something, they would give me a sentence, whatever that sentence would be, or a fine or whatever. But I always felt like a police officer, if they did the same crime, they should get double the penalty. So you're in agreement with that?
100%, because again, we put them in a position of authority, and I'm going to say police, let's say anybody in a school district that does something inappropriate, right? That they have a natural position of authority over certain people, and
Mhm.
when they take advantage of that natural authority, their penalty should be twice as bad. And police is an example. Politicians,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
same thing. It's the idea that we put you there to protect, and you threw it in our face, right?
Right.
Yeah, and you were granted significant powers. Like, I'm not going to say the police put their lives in harm's way quite a bit, but they get a great deal of benefit, right? You already saw that I give them the benefit of the doubt more often than not. That the neighborhood gives them the benefit of the doubt, so they get clout or status out of this, and
Mm.
they just throw it in your face when they're committing these crimes. And the cover-ups are that the cover-up is 10 times worse than the crime itself, because that involves, in order for you to be able to cover it up, now you know that it's a collection of police or a collection of politicians or a collection of people in the school board that are doing this work,
Yeah.
right?
It's funny. I expose somebody. See, that's another thing I do. I'm a dogged reporter, investigator. You can call me all kinds of different things. Just don't call me late for dinner, you know. But uh I exposed a cop that covered up so there was a whistleblower cop that basically ratted on someone that was sleeping on the job, right? A cop that was sleeping on the job. Well, this sergeant, he was in a position of even more power than, the guy that was sleeping, or the whistleblower, basically made it a hostile work environment for the whistleblower, and he got in trouble for it. And he got put into um, like their main headquarters at Aurora Police Department, overseeing records. And I'm like, what kind of punishment is that? That's nothing. I would have stripped him of his rank and possibly even fired the guy. I mean, get rid of that's a bad apple. And you know what ended up happening? He actually got promoted. He's now a promoted, I believe, lieutenant within the Aurora Police Force. And in my view, that's the reason why they're under a consent decree, because they keep promoting from within these cretins that cover up stuff and do nefarious things. I've never understood it.
Yeah, the thing that I hate about that whole definitely the idea that the penalty did not fit the crime, but when he was then making it challenging on the whistleblower, it's that chilling effect, and that's the
Yeah.
same problem that we have with the First Amendment, right? The idea that says if you do something against me, it chills the First Amendment, and then fewer people are willing to come forward and be the observer and be the journalist and be the eyes of the world in this space, and that chilling effect is what really pisses me off, right?
Yeah.
The idea that you're really suppressing people from being the observers of the world, and you're then showing them that not only is it important that we don't know what's going on, if you're the one that leaks it, you're going to get a penalty worse than most, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's it's it's lunacy. You know what I mean? Like it can drive you mad, especially if you go down the rabbit holes that cop watchers go down, or civil rights advocates go down. It becomes kind of maddening in a way. I was talking about that trial I was in for Kyle Vincent. I mean, you can clearly see the guy on his body cam just basically taking the butt of his gun, and over the guy is prone on the ground, and he's getting his head bashed in by this cop. And he had some severe injuries. He had a gash and big knots on his face, and I mean, it could have been where he had a concussion. I mean, there was a lot there. He could have killed the guy. And the woman that was standing there got 6 months probation, that didn't even put her hands on the guy. And the guy that actually did, the bulk of the assault, completely off. I was stunned at the decision. I was sitting in the courtroom and I was like, are we in the twilight zone right now? Like the jurors didn't see the same video that everybody else in the world did, and it just seems like the system is tilted so one-sided towards cops that it's the reason why I continue to do what I do and rail against any injustice I see that cops do, up to and including cops using their sirens and lights to get past red lights and things of
Right.
that nature.
Yeah. It's always, and again, if I did that, would you give me a ticket? Yes. Well,
Right.
then and again, take the ticket.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
Um,
Give yourself a ticket. It's
the
maddening.
the one thing that really becomes troubling there is there's this unhealthy relationship between prosecution and police because the prosecutors rely upon the police, so they can't go hard on the police because then the police stop bringing the prosecutable crimes back into court, and something's got to change about that system as well because they're just too much. They have too much incentive to cover up for one another.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I also think part of the problem is the police unions. I think I'm very pro union, but I'm not pro union when it comes to government, right? And I don't think any government agency should have a union. I believe that normal workers, people that work at fast food joints, even any type of stuff like that, they should have unions. That's where unions are really really needed, not within the federal government. I think it's lunacy. I mean, these people make literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like I've uncovered salaries of not even sergeants that they're up in the almost 100,000 or even $100,000 range to do a job that is not nearly as unsafe as it used to be. It used to be a top 20, unsafe job, and now it doesn't even reach the top 20 as far as safety goes.
Yeah, there was a Chicago article. I'm going to say within the last month. The stuff flies by me so quickly that I'll forget a lot of it. But um, that there was something like 12 police that had a $100,000 plus overtime salary, not
Yeah,
their salary,
not
their
their
overtime
salary.
salary
Yeah, yeah.
was in that space. And then what was worse is that they had taken advantage of all of their sick time and all of their PTO in order to qualify for these extra, overtime
Mhm,
positions.
mhm. Yeah, it's crazy the amount of money they make. It would, I mean, if you check out my channel, you kind of know because I've exposed at least about 100 cops' salaries, and they vary. Like when you first get in, it's not quite that much, but if you add in their benefits and you add in their overtime is something completely separate. And these side gigs that they do for businesses and bars and
And Scientology.
Scientology. Yeah, exactly. That's something I kind of wanted to get at, and we kind of touched on it, but the money, I mean, Scientology definitely has deep pockets, so it's not hard for them to just put a lot of money aside to it. Wouldn't consider it. I mean, it is a bribe in a way of giving them money to do private security at their buildings, like the Blue Building in LA and other places with big events.
Chicago does too. So
Yeah,
in
Chicago.
Chicago, there's only one firm that does security there. It's called Blue Star Security. The only way you can be part of Blue Star Security, you need to be an off-duty police officer or a retired police officer, and you have to be in good standing with. You have to have arresting powers and in good standing with the police.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and I view that as a huge issue. I don't think you should be able to hire as a private business, right? You should not be able to hire government employees as your security. I think it's a huge kind of conflict of interest in a lot of ways, because the cops are trained the way that they are, which is another issue that I take umbrance with, as well as the hiring process. I think it starts with the hiring, actually. I don't think they hire the best people, and I don't think their standards are that great. Like, there's no physical standard to be a cop like there is with the firefighter, for instance. Like firefighters have to go through rigorous like physical trials in order
And
to be,
ongoing.
yeah, and ongoing. And I think it should be the same for cops. I don't think, yeah, I mean, if the option is run after a person as a 250-pound, 300-pound person, or taking your gun and shooting them and being done with it, I've seen that happen too
Yep.
many times to count, you know. So it definitely goes with that. But um,
There's so the security is kind of a quid pro quo problem, right? The idea that you're being directly benefited from this, but the Scientology oftentimes has a bit of a three-step or three steps removed process where it's the idea that I'm not going to pay you, but what I will do is I will sponsor a little league trophy in your community so that the little league community is getting the $100,000 bonus from in your name,
right,
or
right,
those types of things. Or, oh, your wife can help me out with an administrative task. Great, I'm going to hire her in these situations. So they create this ability to remove themselves from the untasteful direct, quid pro quo exchange of money in these spaces.
exactly, exactly. If you guys have any questions for Windy City, please put them in chat with the word question in all caps at the beginning so I can get that question over to Windy City. We're talking with Windy City Thetan Watch, aka Paul. He's out of the Chicago area. I highly recommend you guys subscribe. If someone would please put, you guys are
Most
probably all
appreciated.
subscribed anyways, but if not, please subscribe. He's doing fabulous work out there. He's got a different style, I will say, and I like his approach. And someone in chat, I can't remember. I want to give you credit. Maybe you can speak up after I say it. But there's room for every type of protester out there. Like Wendy is not one to yell it's a cult, and things of that nature. But Wendy is very effective with his flyer tech stuff that he does, and also in the conversations he tries to have with people, and the commentary he provides on his channel. So I really recommend that you guys sub up and make sure and comment, because a lot of times those subs won't stick. Like I noticed on my channel, I lose subs all the time because I'll get a rush of people that'll sub, and then all of a sudden some of them go away. It's because you guys aren't commenting. Make sure you make a comment so your sub sticks. So
Yeah.
let's
Wait,
see.
I do. I want to clarify something.
Yeah,
At no point in this argument or in this conversation have I hoped anybody heard me or in any of my conversations anywhere say that any other protester is doing it wrong.
right,
I believe that we all have the exact same objective in that we want Scientology to be gone. Right? How they become gone, not really overly important to us, but if they're gone, that's what it is. And I think that it does take the concert of voices, the screamers, the yellers, the philosophers, the people taking people to lunch in this space. So don't take anything that I've said that says the way that I do it is right and the way that other people
right.
do it is
No,
wrong.
and that's not what I'm saying either. Like I pointed out, like everybody has their role, and they're all super important. I've been watching, like, a lot of the madness out of LA is crazy. I can't believe half of the stuff that I watch out there. But I mean, it's just LAPD being LAPD, and Scientology being Scientology, and it does come from the money aspect. Always follow the money. Let me welcome some people in here that just got here. Chiara is in there. Welcome, Chiara. And Amy, I didn't get a chance to say hey to you. She says Wendy is very intellectual, and I would agree with that. You know, um, Blue Unicorn brings up something very interesting. It's about gaslighting. Um, a lot of times, uh, I that's how I feel about Scientologists. They try to gaslight a lot. Is that do you kind of see things that way too, Wendy? Or
100%.
yeah,
That in and in several situations where there's been a police officer, a Scientologist, and myself on site, the the way that the Scientologist will change the topic so much about, oh, we're here for we don't like hate speech. It's like, well, what about this entire thing had anything to do with hate speech, or the idea that, right, that they're just trying to change that we're here to have a nice spiritual Sunday. It's like, well, if you could explain to me what spiritualism is, I would love it, because no part of your philosophy or your Scientology believes in spiritualness, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. You know,
so
yeah. Go
that
ahead.
that's happening on that police front, where the idea that, it sounds very rational when the police come in. And I also say that the first steps of Scientology for the off the street consumer, it's a gaslighting element. We're this beautifully benevolent organization. Look at how we built up this beautiful building. We're against drugs. We're against we're all about human rights. But if you look into any of those things, they're not against drugs. They talk about being against scheduled drugs, but in reality, they're against all drugs that would help people in any kind of mental crisis they could be in that space.
I.e., the Lisa McPherson case that
One hundred
we
percent.
referenced earlier. I mean, it's crazy. If you need your mental health medication, you need your mental health medication. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? Like for me, it's cannabis, right? Like weed is was a life changing, a lifesaver for me. I was in on a lot of those, um, mental health help type drugs, like for depression, anxiety, stuff like that. And once my insurance was out, I mean, I had no alternative, so I turned to cannabis, and cannabis was everything I needed it to be and more. As long as you're responsible with it, there's no problem. It's like any other drug that you get from a pharmacist, right? You're not going to sit there and take 13 Percocets or whatever. At least I hope you're not doing that. You just have to use your head and use moderation. I've never understood that aspect of Scientology. Again, that goes to the high control portion of Scientology, because if they're controlling what you're putting in your body, what else are they controlling? They're controlling your mind with their hypnotic um, studies, their all that type of stuff. So it's just, to me, it's just really, really a nefarious cult, and I can't call it anything else but a cult. It's definitely not a religion. They don't have any religious tenets per se. There's no commandments. There's no, thou shalt not do this or that and the other. They'll tell you what you can and can't do, but it just doesn't. There's nothing religious about it. There's no religiosity about Scientology, unless you're talking like tithings and things of a monetary nature.
Correct. Yeah. There's the old guy, awkward. I think it's awkward Ben,
Hmm.
but he infiltrated many cults, and back in, it's probably 10 years old. You'll see he's still got videos out there, and he filmed a service in Scientology, and it was the minister up front was saying, "Okay, everybody, put your right hand in the air. Okay, now put your right hand down. Now put your right hand up. Now put your right hand down. Okay, everybody have a head. Okay, great. That's our service for today." It's like, okay, who are you trying to kid that this is a service, right? And
Right.
what I hate is that the government can't judge whether it is or isn't, but it's really hard to understand how that gets away as a religious service. And that's the thing that's happening when DOA is getting arrested and when Jay is getting arrested.
Hmm. Yeah.
By the way, it's probably not even happening at that point,
Right.
but that's the religious service that they're saying is being interrupted in these
Well,
spaces.
who was it the other day? It was somebody in LA. Maybe it was Laura or DOA or someone, but they came because there was some sort of kerfluffle over a religious service, but it was like at 10 o'clock or not at night. I'm like, do these people like practice religious services 24/7? I don't understand. Like at any given point in time, like what they need to do? They need to come out with certain times that their quote unquote
Show me the schedule.
religious services are going on, and then maybe people wouldn't interrupt those. I don't know. I mean, I don't get it. I think it's just reckless and stupid, and a way of Scientology controlling the narrative and potentially getting somebody killed. I think unfortunately, I think it might get that way, especially in LA, because of the way the nature of things with the swatting and everything that's going on over there. I think it is going to come to that. I just have that feeling. Somebody's
And
going
I've
to get
asked the same thing in
hurt.
Chicago. Somebody and Chicago hasn't risen to that same element. We've gotten a couple of swatting calls in that space, but nowhere near as much as LA. But it still is the idea that at what point are you going to come here, guns a blazing, and somebody's going to sneeze and somebody's going to die, right?
That's a great point. I did a video where I was pushed to the ground by a cop, right? And um, TCD was with me, and she noticed that after the fact, when we were outside, the cop's hands were shaking. What if he had pulled out that gun, and pointed at me, which they've done before? I saw it happen to Jay twice. He was swatted 3 times. The second time I was there, and I find it really funny that when I was there, they didn't put him in handcuffs. And that goes back to, see, we've come full circle here, Windy. It comes back to having someone there that can actually deal with the cops in a manner. And I'll give the protesters a lot of credit. They are learning at an incredible rate, yourself included, Wendy, on how to deal with the police. But I think it's always beneficial to have somebody that knows what they're doing with you when you're out there protesting. Because if the cops show up, then I mean, you even said it yourself, you were kind of out of your element. You're getting a little more comfortable with it now, but it is something to consider if you're considering protesting or cop watching or any of those things. It's always better to have another person out there.
Right. That, early in my life, I used to work for a moving company, and one night they went to third shift, and we surprisingly went to for third shift apparently, but we were there third shift, and I'm loading a truck. I'm wearing my Dickies, got no shirt on. It's summertime, got to be 1,000 degrees outside, and two cops come in, and they've got their guns out, and they're pointed at me, and it was a very very chilling experience because exactly what I said, that if he trips over a piece of furniture, right? It's a warehouse. We're loading furniture. There's all kinds of stuff here. My life is in peril because you think that we're in here loading a branded truck with work clothes on at 3 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yeah.
Let's play this back in any rational manner. And he really took a long time to holster his weapon until I could actually pull out a paycheck, or I had a paycheck stub with me. But until I could provide that, I was at gunpoint that whole time. And
And see, you gave up a right there, Wendy.
yep,
You did nothing wrong, and that's the thing. It drives me nuts. There's and I'm not saying I wouldn't have done the same thing with a gun pointed in my face, right? It's no indictment on you whatsoever. But I've learned, okay, so I've my partner is K Dot, DJ K Dot, the party. You
right.
can see him on a lot of my videos. He's in my view the greatest person to ever cop watch. I think he's an amazing human being, and I'm proud to call him my friend. But uh, I just I forgot where I was going with this, but
The idea that I gave,
oh
the idea that I was not
yeah,
breaking the law. There
right,
was nothing that I was doing that was illegal, so I should not have had to forego
exactly,
my First
yeah,
Amendment. I think we missed the first. We didn't come back to First Amendment, but
yeah, yeah,
a fourth. It was really a seizure, and
yeah.
that would have been a Fourth Amendment.
Fourth
I think.
Amendment, yes, Fourth Amendment, yeah. You and see that's the thing. People just, but with a gun pointed in your face, there's not much you could do. I'll give you a little anecdote of mine. The reason that I have the impression of the cops that I do are kind of anecdotal, anyways. But they eventually became more solid with studies and other research that I've done. But um, when I was 16, I went to a club, and I went to it was a club where you could be 16 to 18 and at a certain point they would kick all of the teenagers out, and then it would be like 21 and up, and
Yep.
whatnot. But I knew all the bouncers, so I could stay, right? I just couldn't drink. Obviously, they wouldn't, they didn't want me drinking. Um, but after that, I was with an African American friend of mine, and I was going to take him home, and we were going to at the time I had an '87 Ford Tempo. It was a piece of junk, but got me from point A to point B. But we were just about ready to go, and I didn't realize that I had parked in a postal parking lot, and the postal police came out, guns drawn, on me and this a friend of mine, and they drew their guns because they believed we were smoking weed and searched the car, searched us, all that stuff. And I did give my write up because I didn't know anything at the time, you know. And from that point forward, I just had a really bad taste in my mouth because I thought the same thing. This guy could have killed me if he wanted to, you know, or if he just sneezed, or if he tripped, or you know, any number of things that could have happened. My friend was being vocal, you know, and yelling at him, and I'm like, dude, we're gonna get killed, you know. I was like scared shitless. 16-year-old, no weed in the car. We weren't, you know, we weren't doing anything bad. And you know that there's another incident, but that goes to what you're saying, Wendy. Like when you don't know things, you don't know them, you know. And you know, you got to know your rights and use your rights too, and don't be afraid. I've come to the realization that what I do is very dangerous. I think what I do is much more dangerous than what a cop does because I don't carry a gun.
We can't defend ourselves. We don't have the same
I
tools to
yeah,
defend ourselves.
and I'm a pacifist. I don't, you know, you wouldn't know that from my big mouth on my channel, but I am a pacifist. I believe in the Second Amendment, but I don't own a gun. I don't carry one with me. I don't think I could ever bring myself to shoot somebody, even in a situation where it was life and death with me. I'm not saying I wouldn't defend myself, but it just, I don't think it's within myself to do that. I'm more about believing the good in people than the bad in people, and that's just the way that I've always philosophically led my life. And but it does put a bad taste in your mouth when you have
Yep.
those experiences, you know, and it's just one of those things. But let's get back to Scientology. I kind of wanted to talk to you about what you think the most effective methods are. Do you think the flyers work? Because I know you do a lot of gathering those flyers and stuff like that. I've seen MD Media put up flyer after flyer about you know, Emily Jones and you know, stuff like that. Do you think that that's effective in helping the cause and you know, kind of, you know, furthering what we're trying to do here?
Yeah. Now, the one thing I'll say is that they're all effective. Now, it's to what degree and what right do I have to say yes or no? But I will give an opinion on what we're going to say here. That I feel that if you get further away from the org, that any propaganda you put up um, has a very limited effect. Now, there might be somebody that sees that, and that's great. You know, that it's incredibly good for that to have occurred. Um, I Aaron had put up a video recently about the idea that sidewalk recruiting is one of their most effective ways to do it. Now, I really think it's word of mouth is probably the most effective way for Scientology to grow. And whether it's wise or otherwise, you're meeting people in your social network, bringing them in. And I can't really thwart that effort, right? I can't stand between people having conversations that I don't know are taking place.
Mhm.
Um, the the thing that I'll say about the the chalking, it makes people stop. You'll see people in the neighborhood walk by when there's a sign or when there's chalking,
Mhm.
they'll stop and they'll think twice. And we all think that everybody knows what Scientology is. They don't, and they'll start asking questions. Well, what is this place? So that's one of the advantages that I see in that space. You're right. It's not pulling somebody out. This is mostly helping to get people, prevent people from going in that space. My forte happens to be that I'm typically out there trying to subvert the ability for them to pass out these flyers. And the thing that I don't like about these flyers is that such misleading information, and it looks so nice. I put them up a little bit earlier, right? This beautiful pastel green. I don't know if the
Go
yeah,
closer to the camera, it might pick it up.
okay,
Yeah, yeah, there you go. We can kind of see it. It's still kind of
okay.
blurry, but yeah, it's really
Oh,
nice.
there we go.
Yeah, yeah, there
Way
you
to happiness. So it's an innocuous element. Why wouldn't you pick this up? And it looks like something that it's very misleading. And a cop looks at me and he says, "Why are you stopping them from putting this out?" And I have to explain to them, well, this is the first snort of crack, right? This is what's going to get them in the door, and then they're going to be hooked, and they're going to start to have. They're going to pay retail for the rest of what's going on in this space. So again, I'm biased. I think that my way of protesting is effective. Um, I don't know that internet helps that much because the way that I think about it is I still put up articles on there, but Scientology does do internet advertising, shall we say?
Hmm.
But the problem that my belief is problem with Scientology there is that anybody who's on the internet is sophisticated enough to also look at usually the first time you see any kind of advertisement for anything, you look to say for reviews or
Right,
what's the opposite position here.
right.
So that's a challenge for them. These events that they put out there, and we're seeing them through like meetups and Eventbrite, those I think are pretty effective. Easter was very effective. We saw a lot of people go in on Easter. So that's where Scientology, I don't know how to defend against those Eventbrites, and I know that many of the people in our chat, they see these and they send them to me. And whenever I know it's happening, I know that's a day I have to be at the org in order to shut this down. Now, the the piece that's, let's say, maybe not as visible is writing the letters to our politicians and writing the letters to the school board saying, hey, make sure that you're not doing the applied scholastics technology in this space. I think that those are effective because most of those officials have to read those letters, right? And if we can just get one of them to get interested in this process,
Mhm.
that'd be great. Putting stuff out for reporters. I do press releases to reporters quite a bit to see if I
Yeah.
can get them to pick it up.
Wow, Anna, thank you for gifting those 5 memberships.
Thanks,
You
Anna.
just did it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Means a lot to the channel, and it definitely helps. So I'm wondering, and I forgot to ask Phil this question, and I know you were never in, just like I was never in that cult. But do you think that there's any good that they do for the people within Scientology?
I'm going to say the people that are within, there's a slight possibility of yes. The people in the community, I've told people before. I've been in the church. I'm an ordained minister, and I worked for the church for a very short time. And a lot of money flows through a church,
Mhm,
but money flows through most churches, and by that I mean that it goes back out and helps the community in some way, shape, or form. You never see Scientology helping the community. They don't feed the hungry. They don't clothe the poor. They don't house the unhoused. Right in that space.
mhm,
Now, this stupid caveat that I'm going to make is there's an older woman who I've been able to engage a few times, and she'll talk to me, and we have a conversation. She does what's called letter writing. Maybe it's letter regging, but Dave or Skinner is going to know what her actual thing is. But she goes in every day and she writes letters to people to say, "Hey, you haven't been here for a while," and I think it gives her a sense of belonging, and that
mhm,
you know she's further along in life than most of us. And it's that sense of belonging. So she probably does have feel good right there. But
mhm.
I could name 1,000 other ways that she could do a letter writing campaign that would help a million people. This doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Plus, if you think about it, having an elderly person write letters probably not the greatest thing for them health wise, right? I've seen a lot of these older ones, especially like really elderly people, and I understand the elderly abuse angle to this thing. It's like it's crazy. You're having people pick up trash and I mean, just stupid things that you wouldn't. I mean, I would never treat my elderly parents like that. Like I don't want them picking up trash and doing little mundane things. I mean, that would, you know,
Laura's dad, right? Laura's
yeah,
father.
yeah. It's a great example. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I was watching one video, I can't remember who it was, but there was this little old lady and she was sweet as could be, and she was talking with the protester, and she'll probably get in trouble for it, which is ridiculous too. but she just wanted to go about her business. And, the protester wasn't giving her a hard time. They were just trying to have a nice little conversation before she went in the building. And I even think she had the vest on. And I'm like, golly, this woman's been in indentured servitude for how many decades now? And it's just so sad to see. And the kid angle to me is really crazy too. I can't imagine. Phil told this story about this kid that was standing up doing a pile of dishes, a mile high, and he chokes up every time he talks about the kids. But I choke up when I think about the people that have lived on this planet for decades at a time, and they're sitting there doing these, really menial, mundane tasks that a younger person should definitely be doing instead of them.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So she might be the oldest member here in Chicago. Um, I've had 4 or 5 experiences with her. One was I was following body routers back to the org. There was 3 of them, and they're young. They're
Mhm.
probably mid-20s, and there's a security guard there. The woman, she comes across the street because they live in the apartment across the street. She comes across the street and she struggles to get up the curb. She had to step up 2 or 3 times to get the momentum to get up
Mhm.
the curb.
Mhm.
And then she walks in. And before she walks in, the 3 body routers walk in and the security guard closes the door. I'm like, why the hell doesn't one of you have your arm out for this woman? Right?
Right.
It boggles my mind. And then maybe 2 weeks later, I was able to stop her, and she said, "Oh, my back, I've got some back pains," and we said, "Oh, can you take medicine or therapy for that?" And we had a conversation, and she goes, "Well, no, I never take meds." I'm like, yeah, I've had a chiropractor before, but they passed on, so they're not in there anymore. So that usually helps. And it just was this. It would have been the same conversation that any of us would have had with our grandmother, right? And then she's going to go in and do a job, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, do a job for pennies on the dollar too, man. It's just so sad. I want to leave it here, Wendy, because I want us to have a part 2 because I am fascinated by your work out there in Chicago, and make sure you
I
check
appreciate
out
it.
Windy City if you haven't already subscribed. He's an amazing protester out there in Chicago, as many protesters are. There's different walks of life. How do you? Real question. Actually, before we go, I got one more question before we. How do you feel about minors protesting, Wendy?
Yeah, I, I don't like it. I like where their heart's at. I think it's dangerous, and I'm going to say that I fell into a trap. He was here in Chicago, and I went out to meet him because I didn't like the idea that he was in the city on his own in that space. And I'm going to say, hey, I think that Chicago's safe, but I just don't think it's a very smart or safe thing to do. I love where his heart's at, and again, whether it's the the person we're all talking about or any other one, um, I think there's better ways that a minor could protest, and it probably should be in a more organized fashion than what's going on there, right?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I just bring it up because that's been a heated topic of discussion, especially out in LA. And
Yeah,
I'm in agreement, man. I think there is a place for minors to protest as long as their parents are teaching them exactly what they're protesting about and they're there with them. It's just crazy to think that there are minors that could potentially cause a lot of trouble for a lot of people
right.
out there. But all right, we're gonna leave it there.
But I'm going to ask you one favor,
Yes.
and I'm going to say I'm doing the same of Joe Cool. I really do want to become more well educated on how I should be handling this. And it's almost like, hey, let's grade the protester, and I don't mean it in a derogatory way, but what are some opportunities that we could improve with the style of what's going on in this space? And
Yeah.
you and Joe are people that can really help me handling the police in a better way than I'm doing.
Yeah, I would say, Wendy, again, look up your local laws because they're a
Right.
little different in Chicago than they are in
Correct.
in Denver. But in my opinion, I don't think you should ever give up your rights once you know them.
Yep.
So once you know your rights, you know, the First Amendment, Second, Third, Fourth, all of them, you know, that I would start there, because that's kind of the lay of the land. It doesn't matter what local municipalities say about what you can and can't do. Those give you a good guideline. I would recommend reaching out to Joe since he's in your neck of the woods at the moment. I believe. I don't know. I don't think he left, but he's from the Chicago area. He knows, you know, the ins and outs of the city. But I guess my advice for protesters in particular is if you don't know the law, don't do it. Because when the cops show up, you could freeze and it could cost you your life. It could cost you a beating, an arrest. It could cost you um, a lot of money too. So I would say if you're a protester or cop watcher and you're just getting into it, make sure you're ready to take the ride. You know, have a contingency plan, a plan in general. If you get arrested, what's going to happen to you? You know, what's going to happen to your possessions? Where, you know, who's going to bail you out? Make sure you have enough money because you can't rely on your chat to bail you out every single time. I know that there are people like that, you know, rely on chat monetarily for everything, and I would not recommend that. I would have money set aside to help get you out of jail because it's not, it shouldn't be chat's responsibility to get you out. As generous and as loving and caring as this community is, and I've seen it time and time again, if they want to provide, they will provide for you. But I think it's incumbent upon you to just already have that money readily available to you for bail, for, you know, whatever costs that are incurred. That maybe you need to get a new phone because they confiscated your phone, something of that nature. um I would recommend like having a plan as far as like who is going to bail you out. You have to think of these things as a protester and as a cop watcher. You can't, like, look what happened to Nance Drew, right? I mean, she was
Yep.
put in jail because her boob apparently rubbed up against Scientologists, and that's ridiculous. But she had to take the ride.
Yep.
So I don't know if she had a contingency plan in place when she did that. So
She
that's,
did, but I would say that that
yeah,
also got me
yeah,
thinking that I didn't at that
yeah,
time, and
yeah,
I now do have that contingency
yeah, yeah,
plan.
yeah. And that's, so that's the first bit of advice I would say. But don't do anything illegal. I mean, that's a pretty obvious one. And you know, if you don't know what you're doing out there, hang out with somebody that does.
Yep.
Um, it's incredibly important, and I would recommend pairing up. Anyways, I'm kind of, I do a lot of solo work because, you know, a lot of times KDOT's working and I just can't get with him. But I'm seasoned enough to know what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and all that, where I can be out on my own. But I wouldn't recommend that for the person just starting up protesting or cop watching or anything like that. So those would be my first steps for success. I've never been arrested, and there's a reason for that. Patrick says the best response to the read a book reply. How much is the book? Reply to the price. So everyone must pay money to learn about Scientology.
I do
You
like
know
that.
that makes it a cult. Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, Patrick. So do you want to plug anything before we get out of here, Wendy? I will have a part two with you sometime in the future. I think we just scratched the surface on a lot of topics, and there's lots of other stuff I'd like to talk to you about as well. But anything you want to plug before we get off the air here?
Not really, other than the channel, and I do think I'm going to be out at the org tonight for graduation. So
Oh, awesome! Perfect.
5 Central,
Awesome. 5 Central, so that'll be 4 my time. Six Eastern. Make
six
sure you,
Eastern.
yeah. Make sure you check out Windy City Thetan Watch. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you're on the replay crew, I do appreciate you. I don't know if you knew this, Wendy, but people on the replay crew do have an opportunity to do a super thanks, which is the same as a super chat. So you can do that. Do that with Windy. Give him a little bit of love. Do you have memberships on your channel, Windy?
I do. I've been very fortunate, and again, I've had a very loyal following. So we're fully monetized, and yeah, anything that helps, it goes right back into the channel.
Yeah. So make sure you support them in that way. Thank you, Anna, for gifting those memberships. Speaking of memberships, and if you want to become part of the Monster Squad, make sure you sign up for the $3. I will do one live stream for members only, but I will release it after for non-members because I don't want anybody to feel left out. The emojis, I've revamped the emojis. I'll be working on another emoji right after we get off the air here. I just got enough for that. So okay, so make sure you check out Windy City Thetan Watch. That's a mouthful to say, Windy,
Yes.
but I love it. He does great work out there. To make sure you support his efforts. All right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate having you have me on, and it was a great conversation. I love the conversation. It felt like a conversation.
Absolutely. That's kind of how I do things here. Look, we're at an hour and a half, Wendy. I don't think you expected to be that long, but and then we could have went all day long, Wendy.
Correct.
That's how I am. But I'll leave it for part two. They always say leave them wanting more. So
Always leave them wanting more. Yep.
yeah, so that's what we're going to do here. We will have a part two with Wendy at some point. But Windy City, thank you for coming onto the channel and expressing some of the views and viewpoints and all that. And I look forward to your work. And I'll be probably watching tonight if I'm not super busy with 50 million other things like hail damage and whatnot.
Yeah. Good
All
luck
right.
taking care of all that.
Yeah. Oh man, I already got to call into the insurance company, and it's a pain. It's going to cost me at least $1,000. So, Anna, those memberships,
Ouch.
man, keep them coming, man. Anna, that was really good, and I really appreciate it. But all right, take care, everybody. Have a great day. We will see you guys on the next video.